Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the ColdFusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community. Welcome to Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition. It's March 2nd, 2021. We're up to episode 93, Brad. Can you believe it?
93. You know, it feels like we've only done like 92 other episodes or so?
Yeah, you probably missed one.
Would be at 93 already.
Yep. Well, I'm Gavin Pickin, a software consultant for Order Solutions, and Brad Wood, who's joined me today, is also a software consultant for Order Solutions. He's got a fancier title than me. Which one did you make up this week?
Doer of the Things.
Doer of the Things.
Official title this week.
Sounds pretty professional. Well, we want to thank our sponsor, Order Solutions, for being able to make this possible. They obviously do a lot of work with the community and open source, and this podcast is one of those things that we're trying to do to spread the news about ColdFusion and hopefully grow the language and help everybody find things they need to find. One way you can say thanks to Order Solutions is to like and subscribe to our videos on YouTube. We're trying to get our numbers up there a little higher. Thanks to everyone who watches live. I know most of you are subscribed, but if you're listening to the podcast, maybe you can jump on YouTube and follow us there as well. And another way you can support Order Solutions and say thanks is by supporting CFCasts, which is our video platform that we're releasing new and paid new content every week. Some of it paid, some of it free, and we'll be talking a little bit more about what some of that content is a little later. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters because they're actually paying more than half the bill for this podcast every week now. We've got 68%.
Gavin and I are expensive. You wouldn't believe what it costs to have us around.
Yeah, for sure.
I require a steady stream of coffee or green matcha tea lattes, depending on the day.
Yeah, I live off chocolate. So, but we have about 33 Patreon supporters now, providing 68% of the funding for this podcast. And a few of them have upped their packages lately because of the new perks that we'll talk a little bit more at the end of the show.
Love the new perks.
Mm-hmm.
I would just like to say that I suggested that a long time ago. I'm glad to see we're finally doing it.
Yep.
I don't know if it was on my suggestion or not, but it was a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some pretty cool little perks there. And, thanking those who are thanking us. A lot of thanks everywhere. So, okay. Let's get into the news. So first up, we have another product that Adobe is end-of-lifing. So they're...
I was a little surprised to see that, but I'm not so surprised.
I remember hearing a little bit about this before, but Brackets, which is one of their editors, have been running since, I think, 2010, back in the day when Atom was big, and Brackets was another, big editor. They worked on it for a long time, but I guess in September they're finally end-of-lifing it, and they're not supporting it anymore. And so Adobe has been working with the VS Code team to make it easy if you are using Brackets to switch over to VS Code. So they made a little extension pack to make it easier. It has a Brackets key map, so your key bindings are all basically brought over. Has some live server similar to live preview in Brackets. They have sneak peek similar to quick edit in Brackets, and then they also have the IntelliSense for CSS. So basically all the big features that Brackets was known for and all the Brackets users loved, they worked really hard to get it up and running in VS Code. So we have a link that we'll share in the chat and in the show notes about if you are a Brackets user, how you can switch over to that.
What's interesting is the first thing I thought of was, I assume he's still there. I haven't looked at him in a long time, but Adam Lehman, who used to be the product manager or something for ColdFusion a long time ago, had moved over to Brackets way back in the day, and I thought he was still there, and I was curious if he was still working with Brackets, and if so, where he would go.
Yeah, I think Adam Lehman's been on a few projects. One of them was Brackets, as you mentioned, but I think he's been working on a few for a while. They seem to multitask over there a little more, the project managers.
Yeah, I have noticed that. Even a lot of the ColdFusion team people will be on kind of a suite of products, which sort of makes sense, even though we wish they were dedicated. Looks like his current title is Director of Product and Technology, Adobe I/O at Adobe.
I think he's been doing more of that Adobe Teach, or There's another couple of little products they have like that, part of the Creative Cloud, I believe.
You say beach, like let's go to the beach and
No,
swim?
teach, like TEACH.
Teach?
Yeah, like you're teaching somebody, or is it something
Oh,
like that? It was for,
teach?
yeah.
I don't know.
It's hard to keep track. There's so
You're out of
many.
my league, man.
Yeah, but yeah, as Scott mentioned in the chat, Scott and I actually went to one of the Brackets meetups in San Francisco a few years back and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it was right after a CF Summit, not a CF Summit, AWS Summit, and we went to the Brackets meetup. It was pretty cool. We wrote an extension and everything, got to play with it. It's pretty neat. And
So,
a lot of the things that VS Code does now, Brackets was trying to do, make it JavaScript friendly and extendable and all that. So it was
just to
pretty cool.
clarify, did Adobe pass the baton to VS Code, or did Adobe just drop it like it's hot and VS Code was like, hey, come use us instead? How did that actually work?
VS Code said that they have worked with Adobe to bundle the extension.
Okay.
So I don't know how much integration that is, but VS Code probably reached out to them because there was a tweet dropped by Adobe saying it's end of lifing in September, and like 6 hours later, VS Code said, "Hey, we've worked with Adobe to get you this thing." So either they saw it, and within 6 hours they already had it built.
Well, that makes sense if
Or
there's a
not.
chunk of users and they're like, hey, let's get all those users to come over to us if we can have a equivalent platform. That's interesting.
And obviously Adobe is supporting VS Code. A lot of their people are going that way. ColdFusion is,
Well,
but
yeah,
doesn't mean
and
Brackets
ColdFusion
would.
Builder is supposed to some decade come out on a new version VS Code based as well. So it
Yeah.
is interesting.
I think that's just becoming the default, code editor. Obviously, there's some IDEs around. There's a lot of bigger IDEs for a lot of things, but VS Code is definitely winning the market for everything else. Okay.
Well, more reasons to be on VS Code, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely like the key maps. That's pretty cool. Okay, we also have a Fusion Reactor webinar, but this one was kind of interesting because the blog post is named "What are 5 things you should always check before you release your application?" And if you click on it, then you realize, oh, it's a webinar. So it was kind of sneaky under the covers, but
You fell for the clickbait.
yep. But I would have probably clicked on it more if I knew it was a webinar. But anyways, so that's going to be with Mikey on March 25th, 9:38 a.m. Well, I guess it's AM. It's PDT. And so they're releasing talking about releasing new app can be stressful. Most dev teams have a QA process, but they should probably go a little deeper and to spot some performance issues and errors buried deep in the code. And basically, he talks about the 5 things you check your release. And I think that's a pretty good one. And you've tweeted a couple times this week about why Fusion Reactor can save your bacon. And there will probably be some good stuff in there, some good hits and tips. So you guys can go register on the link here I'm about to share in chat. But also, I think you actually mentioned it in a couple tweets. I think I've shared them here. But yeah, Fusion Reactor can definitely give you some insight that you just won't get elsewhere. I mean, let's be honest.
True.
So
It's true, I admit it. Completely true.
Yep. Okay. Looks like we also had a couple meetups last week as well. So the Online CF Meetup, if you missed it, the Golden Hammer, Confessions of a Recovering Database Abuser, Sean Oden. Looks like he presented that on February 25th, and we have the recording link, which I'll share in the chat. And of course, if you just look at YouTube and search Charlie Earhart, you'll see a ton of his meetup videos on YouTube. There's a lot of videos on his YouTube channel, and the rest of them are still available if you go to the meetup site itself. For the online ColdFusion meetup, there's a link, I believe, to his old recordings, and there's plenty there for sure. So there's also an upcoming meetup on March 11th, and that's ColdFusion 101, Intro for Beginners, Devs and Decision Makers and CEOs. And that's going to be David Byers is going to be talking about that one. And so we'll share the link to that meetup here as well, so you can go check that out. And we'll have that in the show notes for you as well. So that's going to be Thursday, March 11th, 11 a.m. to 12 and Central Time for that one. Okay, so we also had an audits webinar. Brad, you want to tell us a little bit about that one in case everybody missed it?
Doesn't have anything cool like golden hammers,
No.
unfortunately. But I assume we're talking about the Stashbox one with John Clausen.
Yes, yes we are.
Yes, that was February 26th, and John Clausen talked about a pretty exciting, I don't know if we call it a library, what we call it, but a new product, newish from Ortus called Stashbox, which I think is sort of like Elastistash mixed with Box, and then the logo's a mustache, so it's kind of hard to beat that.
Yeah.
But basically, it helps, especially when you're deploying containers. You have all these log files, these error messages, and these bits of data all over the hard drive of your containers that you want to be able to track. And when we have a server that goes down with Ortus and the container gets shut down and deleted, we lose all that information. So Stashbox is like this consolidated server built on top of Elasticache, if I'm saying it right. Elasticsearch, something. That it kind of like pulls in and indexes all that stuff, and you can go through and search it and you can find it. It's pretty cool. We're plugging it into all the stuff that we have just to help kind of track and index and organize all your different log files and your error messages. I think it has like a native, I don't know if you call them clients, but these little processes that run inside your containers or on your servers, and you point into the log files you want, and it ships the messages over to Stashbox as they come in. So if you're not familiar with that, you're gonna want to kind of go back and watch that, because it's a pretty cool tool, and I mean the UI is really nice and slick.
Yeah,
done a good job with it.
they really have, and that is available up on CFCasts.com. One of the new releases this week, and that's free. So go watch that on CFCasts.com. Okay, and then Query of Query Lucee. Your query changes are coming out very soon. 5.3.8 is going to be going stable here very soon with all your awesomeness. But they're working on the query updates for Lucee 6 already, and they're looking for some people to submit some complex examples of queries for testing. I guess right now you did a lot of work on that, but there's still things like some reserved words that'll blow up and whatnot, and so.
Well, yeah, I mean that's an unrelated ticket to the
Yeah.
stuff that I had done, but yeah, Zach's working on some tickets. We had found an issue. I say we, I didn't find it, but I've been talking with him about it. We'd found some issues where, and this is typical, certain like column names that use a reserved word you can't use, and unique was the one in question. Lucee had added a unique column to one of its query objects that comes back from some CF scheduled task tag or something. And one of our users was running it through query to filter rows out and started blowing up because it didn't like the column name unique. And this is one of the queries that didn't use the new query implementation that I had worked on, or at least revamped. It fell back to that hypersonic H2, SQL server. And so Zach's been working on trying to figure out how to properly escape those, which is a bit of a pain because from my understanding, in an H2 database, the only way to escape reserved words is to put them in double quotes. And whenever you put them in double quotes, it also forces them to be uppercase. So it's
Whoops.
like you get one, you have to take the whole package. It's like, well, we don't want them to be uppercase. We just want them to be escaped so they can be anything. But so Zach's been looking for some examples from our users to be able to put into test cases, because he had said to me the other day, we don't really have we don't have a lot of good test cases doing joins and queries. So the best test cases come from actual, user code that people are running. So he's been fishing around on Twitter to get people to send him some example query usages they have, so we can make sure we cover a lot of different use cases and put those into the test suite for Lucee.
Yeah, oh, that's pretty cool. I like that, and I'm curious. I mean, Lucee 6, he said something elsewhere on Twitter that something was already merged into that branch. So that means that things are coming along nicely, right? We're in was 5.3.8 the last stable that's going to come out before 6? Was that right, or is it 9? I know we're getting pretty close to basically the next big version's coming out, or the next major is going to be.
Depends on who
soon.
you talk to. Allegedly, Lucee 5.3.8 will be the last 5 version.
Gotcha.
And I think Zach's trying to work on, if you're not aware, Zach Spitzer's sort of the acting project manager right now for Lucee. Patrick Quinn had done it for quite a while. Zach's sort of kind of taken over to help organize tickets and figure out releases and stuff. So if you've got a ticket that's not being addressed as a super big blogger, send it to Zach Spitzer, because he's the one kind of helping manage that stuff right now. But anyway, from what he's talking about, they're hoping to try to make 5.3.8 be a long-term support or an LTS release. So, they're trying to get all the regressions put in it, get everything fixed, so there's nothing still left hanging out there and broken. And in theory, if all goes well, 5.3.8 will be the last 5 release, and 6 will be the next one. I don't know how well that'll work, because my understanding, I mean, not to poo-poo on it, but my understanding is that 6.0 is like super early alpha, and the builds have been broken for like a month and just finally started building again like last week. So I don't know like what the realistic window is of when we would have a stable 6.0. And what I hate to see happen, because I've done it myself, is when you're like, this will be the last version, and then we're gonna have this big giant version, and then like 2 years later, you finally get to a point where you can release it, and your product's like stagnated for this like huge amount of time, because you already like said we're gonna have to make this big jump, but there's so many things broken. So I'm hoping Lucy's able to like not do that, because if there's like a bunch of tiny stuff that goes out, and 6 is still like a year away from being like a stable release, I'd sort of hate to not have release for a year. But I really don't know how to play out, but that's the plan. So we'll see. The good news is 5.3.8 is looking to be very stable. They've got pretty much every regression they could find has been addressed in it. And the 5.3.8 release candidate came out a while ago, but I've probably seen like 10 or 15 snapshot builds since then. So I know there's still stuff kind of trickling into 5.3.8. I don't know if they're going to make another release candidate, or I don't even know when they're planning on releasing it. But yeah, it'll be fun. We'll find out how that works, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like you say, if you, working so hard on the next major that it stagnates, that's never good. But you don't want to release a major version with issues too, so you want to get that right. So
yeah.
Good times.
I sort of like love it and hate it when you're like, I have a ticket and it got addressed, and we're like, we're gonna merge this into 6.0. You're like, oh, it's gonna be 3 years before it ever comes out. You're like, why can't it just go on the next version, man? The next version.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what happens, unfortunately, when you have these like huge version numbers you save up for, is sometimes it takes a long time to get those out.
Yep, for sure. Okay, well, let's jump into our CFCasts update, since we already mentioned the webinar was going to be there. So John Clausen's webinar is on Stashbox, is already up there. That was released yesterday. And then we had some content last Wednesday. It's our usual release date on that Command Box Zero to Hero workshop that you built. So some useful commands, some useful modules, and environment variables. So those are the 3 videos that came out last week. And then we have a few more coming out this week. So tomorrow, keep an eye out for the next Command Box Zero to Hero workshop videos. But we're getting a pretty good collection of stuff on there now. Got quite a few workshop videos up there from Command Box Zero to Hero, as well as the ColdFusion Zero to Hero. Got a ton of webinars up there, and quite a few different series. So we're getting a nice little library. So if you haven't checked it out, go to cfcast.com and sign up for a free account to get access to all the free content, and then subscriptions give you access to all the other materials. So pretty cool. Okay, conferences and trainings. We actually have a couple new ones in here now. So if you like swag, the first one might be interesting for you. ViewConf, and their tagline, I guess, for this year is Virtual View Love. That's going to be online April 14th. It's going to be free, and the first 500 people to register will get some swag. A special swag box will be sent to you. So that's pretty exciting for all those people who are missing their swag from the conferences. But I don't know about you, Brad, but I can probably live just swag t-shirts alone for like 2 months without having to do any laundry. I went through them all the other day. I had a box
This
of
is
stuff.
actually one of the first podcasts in a long time I'm wearing a shirt that's not a conference shirt. It's a shirt my kids got me for Christmas. But yeah, I've got most of my shirts, like 95% of my t-shirts are all conference swag shirts for sure.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool. I went through my closet the other day, and I was like, I got a whole bunch I hadn't even opened from the bags and everything. It's kind of crazy. But swag's always good. My kids love the stickers. My wife tries to steal them too, so I don't really get to keep very many of my stickers. But there's some pretty cool stuff in the swag. So, but the conference is going to be, live video with chat Q&A with the speakers. They're going to have attendee lightning talks too, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. But it is hosted by Evan Yu and the core team. and they're going to have a live DJ and a virtual party. So pretty cool. I'm not sure if that just means if you get bored of the conference talk, you just jump to another room and the DJ's in there, but pretty good. And they have some workshops that they'll be announcing soon, but you can get more information on viewconf.us. So that's a new one coming up here. We also have Redis Conf. So have you been doing, I know you've been doing a lot of work with Couchbase over the years. Have you done a little more with Redis lately, Brad?
I haven't done much with Redis, and this is sort of a silly reason, but the main reason, honestly, that I haven't done much with Redis is because I was pissed off they have no Windows installer, and I don't want to freaking use Docker just to like spin up a Redis instance, even though I know that's easier. I sort of hate using Docker on my machine because it's Docker machine, so it's like the whole freaking VirtualBox, stupid VM and everything, and the Docker machine commands, and it's slow, and it never works right. And I'm really like, oh my gosh, just let me install it. It's just a Windows service. Nope, doesn't exist. So I'm like, you know what? Screw it. Sorry, Redis. I don't care enough to mess with that. So that's literally the biggest reason I just haven't messed with Redis that much. Is I'm like, you know what? Just let me install it, or I really don't care. So we use it, and I've used it in our Docker stuff, but I've just never really played locally because I have a low tolerance for how much effort I want to put into something. And Couchbase is just like, oh yeah, Windows installer, MSI, click, click, click. All right, whatever, it's a Windows service. I start it when I want it, and then I stop it. No Docker needed for local, and that's the way I prefer it.
Gotcha.
I'm lazy.
Well, they have their free conference April 20th and 21st. They did have a call for speakers, which is now closed. They haven't released any information on who's speaking or what they're speaking about yet, so we'll give you more information as we get it. But put that in your calendar.
I will say, just on that topic, I think that just from looking at our, because Ortus has a MongoDB extension for Lucee, we have a Couchbase extension for Lucee that I wrote, and then we have a Redis extension for Lucee, which Luis wrote. Out of those, I've seen the most activity on Redis for the last year at least, just as far as like support questions, licenses being purchased, questions about them. So I think Redis definitely is the hottest of the three, just as far as what people are using, which is understandable.
Yeah,
I still really like Couchbase. Unfortunately, they've added a lot of limitations onto the community version that didn't used to be there back in the day. So, you have like limits to how many buckets you can use, and it's a little annoying to have to deal with that.
Yeah, we always want as much as you can get for free, but
yes, we do.
Yeah, I know with Redis, a lot of the way their pricing works is you sort of get like a stripped down single core version for free, and if you want all the bigger multi-core version type setup, more redundant setup, that's usually where the licensing kicks in. But I know doesn't Adobe
as soon as it
support
starts to look enterprisey and failovery,
yeah,
the money kicks in.
Yep, exactly. But Adobe added Redis support recently as one of their caching options, right? And that's why I know that a lot more people have been looking at Redis.
Well, that was back in like 2018, wasn't it?
That's what I thought.
2018 version.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That was one of the because they had cache for a while. And
yeah, Redis was the first like external session cache.
Exactly.
I'm still pretty disappointed in how Adobe did that whole thing. You look at how Lucee is architected, and it's just so much more powerful. It's like unlimited number of cache providers, extendable, externally, and you can just tie your sessions to whichever one you want. Mongo, Couchbase, Redis, and Adobe added external session storage in Redis, which was like sweet, but it's like hard coded only for Redis. Though they added a second one. What is it? Is it Memcache? No. I thought the latest version of Adobe had something else in the drop down now than Redis, but
yeah,
I'd have to go look at it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, and
but yeah, I think you're right. 'Cause we have clients that are using it. I know they're on Adobe ColdFusion and they're using the Redis storage. I think that's one of the things that kind of pushed Fusion Reactor even to add some special hooks into Fusion Reactor to help monitor Redis usage, because it'll monitor the under the cover stuff that ColdFusion is doing with Redis, which is pretty cool.
Yep, very cool. So yeah, if you're looking for a caching solution, maybe if you're using Adobe, it's your real good option. Under Lucee, like you said, there's Couchbase as well as Redis, and other options there. But find out more at the conference, 20th and 21st of April. Okay, DockerCon, since Brad just spurted how much he doesn't like Docker much sometimes, on his local development anyway.
I don't like to have to use it locally. Though all the Tech and Power stuff I did recently, I will say it was really nice they had it in Docker.
Yeah.
I was kind of appreciating that. But it's because they had like PostgreSQL and Python and ColdFusion, like all these things spinning up at the same time, and it actually was really convenient for that. But
yeah,
I love it and I hate it at the same time. It's a love thing.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely got its place. You know, Command Box takes away a lot of the reasons most people wanted Docker in the first place for local development. So it does. It's nice to spin up every once in a while, but definitely for our servers, we're all hitting Docker away. It's definitely helping us a lot there. And,
yes, yeah. For Ortus, as soon as we hit stage or production, 100% Docker, and I really do enjoy it there.
Yep. And so docker.com/DockerCon. That's going to be May 27th, a one-day conference. You can find out more about it there. Registration is available, so jump up and get that. And then talk a little bit about our Ortus workshops. We have the quick workshop March 11th and 12th. We have a couple of people registered already, which means it should be going
forward. Sign up fast, people. Seats are flying off the shelf.
Yep.
Going soon, fastly.
Yeah, we don't usually have too many people in the workshops. We like to keep it small, especially with the online workshops. So if you're wanting to sign up, please do. The registration link will be shared in the chat, and it's available in the show notes as well at the end of the show. We have some more dates coming for other workshops soon. There'll be Command Box Zero to Hero, ColdBox Zero to Hero, ColdBox Hero to Superhero. And then we should have some more information about Call for Speakers coming out soon for Into the Box, our Developer Week style, which we're planning to have in September. So we'll have more information on those dates and Call for Speakers coming out soon too. So, and then if you can't wait for those conferences, you can go to comps.tech and check out the list of all the different possible conferences around. And as soon as we have some dates, we'll be adding ours there as well. But if you check that out,
CFML added there now, right?
Yep. So we need to get some submitted so it'll show up on the list here. As you see, there's quite a few JavaScript ones. So ViewConf is in there. So definitely go check that site out if you're looking for some additional content. Although there's a lot of conferences online right now, so there's plenty of it out there.
This is hilarious. Out of all the pieces of information that were the most important critical pieces of information for them to list about a conference, they had the name, okay, the date, all right, hashtag Twitter, and the link to the code of conduct, because I don't give a flip. What? Okay.
Yeah.
When is it? What's the date? That's what I want to know. Every single one of these code of conduct. Well, bless their hearts.
Okay, so let's get into the blogs, tweets, and videos of the week. So the first one we have up here is actually one by Charlie on the Fusion Reactor site. And so I'll share your screen for those watching. So changing Fusion Reactor's slow request threshold. Why and how? If you notice in the UI that which requests are slow, the duration show up in red on the UI. And the default is 8 seconds, but you can actually change that, but most people don't even know how to do it. So Charlie, Charlie's gone through the, how to see and change the slow request options, get into the settings, so really detailed. But this is pretty important if you're wanting to filter out your requests. Sometimes 8 seconds is too short if you're, depending on the type of task, sometimes it's way too long. So being able to get out and monitor that and change that yourself.
And it's not just the red highlight. That is one of the things it controls, is highlighting as red.
Okay.
Fusion Reactor also has 2 menu items that were confusing to me at first. One was slowest request and one was longest request. I'm like, what's the difference? One of them was just like the overall longest request since the server started, regardless of how long or short it was. And then the slowest request is like a rolling window of the last 100 or so requests that were over the, quote, slow request threshold. So pretty certain that setting also controls what's in that view.
Very cool. So Charlie also linked to a webinar he did on configuring Fusion Reactor and a couple of other video tutorial pages as well. So this is definitely a good blog post to check out. As we always say, we love Fusion Reactor. It's great. But yeah, learning more about it and how to use it make you even more powerful and get to the bottom of a lot more things. So thanks, Charlie, for sharing that. This was an interesting one. Matthew Clemente did a blog post on the UC first function in Lucee, and I'd heard of this function, but I didn't know it did as much as it does. Have you played with this one
I
before,
had
Brad?
forgotten about that. Isn't that like a title case thing?
Yeah,
Transforms the
so
first letter of a string to uppercase, first letter of each word, and optionally. Yeah, I had forgotten that was even a built-in function. I haven't seen that in years.
but the cool thing is it'll actually do first names and last names too. So if you say, hey, I just want to first case this sentence, it'll go through, basically the entire sentence and figure out, oh, these words are actually names, and therefore they should be capitalized anyway. And so you have options for
it recognizes.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. So there's improperly cased stuff. So
Pulling the source code up. What does it call? It calls capitalized method on the string util class.
Yeah.
Which appears to be something custom made. I was checking to see if it used like a Apache library or something. Use white space. I'm looking for like the thing where it determines if it's a name.
Well, he even has a link that says account for Celtic names or Celtic names, depending on how you want to pronounce that. But yeah,
it's the code where it deals with names.
It's not always perfect, but there's a couple of nice little options there, and yeah, I'd heard of it, but I didn't think it was this powerful. So it's kind of neat. But there's two different flags you can pass to it. But basically, the title case is the second argument. So if you want to do title case, like you're going to do a blog post or something, you see every word in the sentence basically. So it's kind of interesting.
You see is how the kids say uppercase these days.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm completely not seeing where it deals with the detecting what things are names.
I know. That also really blew me away. Obviously, first letter of a word, easy enough to do. First letter in every word, yeah, that's not too bad. You could do that. But knowing which words are names, that's pretty cool. So, and then James Moberg responded to the Twitter post about that, saying that he's been working with some Java libraries to do something similar, and was going to be releasing a UDF pretty soon too. So. But it's kind of cool that that's just built into Lucee, and it sounds like it's a little smarter than you'd expect. So pretty cool. So I'll share that link here.
Now I want to know how it does the name stuff. I'm just not seeing it here in the Lucee source code. I'll have to come back and look at this later.
Yep.
How does it know?
And then Charlie mentioned in the chat, sorry I didn't see it when I was talking about it, but Charlie says that on the page he shows a slow request page as well, and there's also a slow transactions threshold and pages for that as well. So yeah, definitely a detailed blog post as we come to expect from Charlie, and he lives up to it. And as Matthew Clemente says in the chat, the name stuff is not perfect, but yeah, he says the Celtic names are not accounted for, which to be expected, but it's better than nothing. So, but I'm kind of curious how they are doing those names too. We'll have to figure that out. Okay, well, let's jump into the next one while Brad keeps Googling that, I'm sure. So next one we have one from Ben Nadal. And this one was pretty interesting. Converting my Loggly search bookmarklets into an unpacked Chrome extension. So, I don't know if you've been bitten by it lately, but there's all sorts of content security policies and Chrome updates and everything, and there's a lot of stuff out there which, locking things down is one way to put it, but breaking stuff is another way to put it. And so, a couple years ago, he said he put a link between his Loggly JSON modal and his JSON Explorer, and basically his little logs, he used to make it so he could, basically show things in JSON easily, and this didn't work anymore with some of these changes. So basically what he did is he made a little Chrome extension, an unpacked Chrome extension, which just loads it off his file system. And obviously you guys don't need to do this, but it's kind of cool that we can do this type of thing with Chrome. And so this is basically his little content script for Chrome, ties it into that, and so basically if it matches certain things, then this little extension can kick in. It has some CSS that he's overriding too. But it's just kind of cool, and we'll scroll down a little bit further for those watching to get to the point where basically he just has it where, if you're clicking on some of the things in Logly, that the extension sort of kicks in and does some work there. But it's kind of neat that, you can sort of basically hack into an existing website and change the functionality just by doing some code in your extension. So if you want to find out more about it, obviously dive into this. Ben's always very detailed in his blog posts and explaining that. But it's kind of neat that he can just tie those two together with a little unpacked Chrome extension. We got a couple more from Ben here. So the next one from him, I thought was kind of neat, was he's using a custom CF param tag that exposes error information in Lucee. So basically he's using a CF param tag, but he wanted to basically wrap it in a try-catch to be able to get a little more information out of it. And so, long story short, he creates this CF specify tag, and then has a name, and a type, and a default, similar to the way you use CF param. But when it actually errors, he can get more information out of it. So, the normal underlying CF param error is something like this. The CF message is count cast string, explicit struct creation to the type of boolean. But what you can do is actually get a lot more information out of it. See if it's defined, if it's got a default, if it's been defined before or not, stuff like that. So it can actually give you more information. And so you just wrapped it up. And I know in ColdFusion we have quite a few tags like this, right, Brad, that will wrap a underlying ColdFusion tag to try and make it a little special, give us ways to mock it up when we're testing or things like that. But it's kind of neat, just the little things we can do to make our life easier as a developer and get more information out of something. So, but
I want to know what program Ben uses to put the little text in the arrows. I always like that.
Yeah.
He always has those in his blog post. Helps talk about what he's doing.
It's probably Envision, Brad. His app. Maybe. Okay, so here's an interesting one that I don't know if you knew about or not. Again, from Ben, but this is an extension of his working on his email tasks. So basically building some custom tags in ColdFusion to help with his email setup, and we got one more in his series. He's got 11 in that series. We think we talked about 10 of them already, so we'll talk about that soon. But what he noticed that in Adobe and Lucee, it seems to treat the caller scope a little bit differently than you may expect. So one of the cool things inside of custom tags is if you use the caller, you can get the page that's calling it, and then basically tunnel back into that calling context. And so if you have the caller dot, URL dot something, or caller dot form dot something, you can access things from the URL or the form scope from inside the custom tag, so you can sort of tunnel out.
The URL and the form scope should already exist inside the custom tag.
Well, it's just an example, but I mean, you can get to other things in there too, not just the URL and form.
Well, I use caller to get to the variable scope of where the custom tag was called.
Yeah.
However, that always makes me a bit nervous because I think it breaks encapsulation pretty badly when you have a little self-contained module that just like reaches out and grabs variables. But if you are coding something that it'll accept that, it's actually kind of nice.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no direct access to those outside variables.
Yep.
And you can chain it. If you have custom tags calling custom tags, you can be like caller dot.
Yeah.
And the law of Demeter is like crying in the corner while you chain your way all the way out to the top level page.
Yeah. And so what he was saying though was that in ColdFusion, if you do like a caller and then use array notation and do URL dot set via caller, basically that will set the URL variable set via caller. And so the URL scope is changed through that array notation. But in Lucee, that'll actually create a variable inside the caller called URL.set via
Lucee's
caller.
behavior. Okay, I had seen this on Twitter, but I hadn't actually read it to see what the difference was. I think Adobe's wrong. Like I said, caller isn't a mechanism for accessing form and URL. Those are just transcendent scopes that the ColdFusion engine just has available to you anywhere. Caller is, I want the variable scope of my calling of the template that included the CF module. So
Yeah.
yeah, if I said caller.url, I would totally expect it to create a URL key in the variable struct of the caller. Lucee is 100% right.
And so that
Honestly, this probably boils down to some weird little Picadillo inside of how ColdFusion references nonsense that just allowed that to work. But I
yeah.
certainly wouldn't have expected Adobe's behavior.
And so if you use the caller.url.sit via caller, Lucee will treat it, that way. But yeah, basically ColdFusion looks like it's taking the string from the array notation and then doing an eval on it, essentially, evaluating it from that context and doing some weird stuff. So there's a difference. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting. Anytime there's a difference, it's nice to know and see. But yeah, it's definitely
I'm just
sneaky.
confused why he was trying to use the caller scope to touch the URL in the first place. It seems like
I
the
think it was
easiest
just
solution
I
is to
think it was
quit
more of
doing
an
that.
example of
Is
something.
this a golden hammer? Is he taking this golden hammer and beating ColdFusion with it?
Huh. That was
I'm looking. I'm thinking he'd created a ticket for it because I'd seen it a couple places. Though,
Yeah.
if anybody deserves a ticket, I think it's Adobe. I think Adobe's behavior is dumb there. Be interesting to know why it does that. I'm trying to. How long ago was this post? I'm trying to see. I'm scrolling through a Slack forum or a Slack channel here that has all the Lucee tickets in it to see if he'd created a ticket for that. Maybe I just saw it come across Twitter. I know Ben doesn't always create tickets when he finds a difference because he's not sure if it's a bug, and that's totally fair.
Yeah. And you're sure which one's a bug.
I don't know if a ticket get created. I think I may have just seen it come across Twitter then.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some other examples where you'd want to access a scope that wasn't the variable scope from there, but most things should be in the variable scope. Or
the few times I've used custom tags, if I want them accessing anything, well, if I'm passing something in, if I want a custom tag to get something, then I pass it in explicitly. But if you want your custom tag to set something, which you had that sort of behavior when you have like the CFHTP tag, right? And unless you use the results equals, I bet that's why. Just occurred to me. So like CFHTP default behavior, you call the tag and this magical variable shows up in your variable scope, which the tag reached out and placed there, called variables.cfhtp. I wonder if like with the CFHTP, you can say results equals, say I want the result to be in local.foo or something. I'm curious if this is some underlying mechanism that Adobe put in place to make that easier. So inside of their, tags, they could reach out and set something into a different scope other than variables. I wonder if that's why caller behaves like that. Because I've always just imagined caller is just like a straight up reference to the variable scope. As if I just passed a variable scope in. It's just a reference to that struct.
yeah, it seems to be more of a tunnel to that context. And that's the way Adobe seems to treat it. And then it evaluates that in that context.
Yeah, which I don't really care for that. But
interesting, though.
I guess the cool thing about that is with Adobe, if I wanted to have a custom tag of my own that created a local variable, and I'm guessing I'd have to test this to see if it actually works. If I created a variable in a scope other than variables, you could probably use that with caller, I'm guessing. But with Lucee, I'm curious now if it would be possible. I'm guessing no, to be able to, put something in the caller's argument scope or something.
He did say if you use caller dot the scope dot the variable, it seemed to work, but caller bracket notation inside a quote, that didn't, because like you said, if it's inside a quote, it's the name of the key. Even if the name of the key had a dot in it, you shouldn't expand it to a key scope. So I think
here's the thing I've heard Misha say 100 times, which is, and he hates the fact that Adobe and in several different places around ColdFusion or CFML treats dots different than brackets. So foo.bar is not always treated the same as foo bracket bar in quotes. And Misha said, I've heard him say it a million times, went from 100 to a million, you hear that? He hates that Adobe does it and it's wrong, and Lucee always treats dots and brackets the exact same. There's no difference. It's merely two different syntaxes for the exact same dereferencing of a variable. And so it's interesting to hear already that this is one of those things where Adobe's like, oh, you use brackets, we're going to go do something else now. And I'd have to go look to see what the other differences are. But I know there's a handful of things that Lucee does different that Misha refuses to fix because he's like, no, dots should be the same as brackets. And I completely agree with him on that. I
Yeah.
think that should be two different syntaxes for the exact same thing. So that's interesting to hear that they have differences there.
Yeah, and I think it's just because they don't evaluate on the string. The string is a string, and you leave it alone. And speaking of that, looks like there's something similar going on in this renaming CFML query columns by Julian Halliwell. And so he's talking about how there's no query rename columns function in either Lucee or Adobe, although Zach Spitzer saw this and made a ticket. But basically, query column names can be problematic in some situations, particularly Adobe, where you may have a query new where you have first name and the first name actually has a 1 starting it. So that theoretically is invalid because you kind of have a variable starting with a number, right? And
Yeah.
then last name has a space in it, so that obviously has problems. So it works in Lucee, but Adobe will error because of that. Um, Basically, just like I said. But yeah, so you get around it. Lucee spreadsheet library, which does support Adobe, which some people forget as well. It actually uses the underlying query Java object. So by using that, you can actually get in the query and use set column names. And so it actually allows you to change the names after it's been created. And so you can actually create a column name which has the right name, and then you can set the query names afterwards, and so then it will actually work.
Yeah, it's kind of surprised that's not a first class feature. Because sometimes you get a query that you can't control, and you just want to be able to massage it without having to like loop over it and create a whole new query. So it would be
Yeah,
nice to see a first class BIF be added into both engines that kind of formalizes that.
yeah, but like you said, it's not officially supported in each engine, but it goes to the Java, you know, query object basically. But they could remove it or change it or something. But ColdFusion does set the names in uppercase if you do something like that. So it's probably what like Zach was dealing with the query stuff as well. He's probably using something like this to rename it and escape it, and then when you do that, it uppercases it. But anyway, so he actually shares a little UDF here
Yeah.
if you want to use it.
So I don't know how Adobe does it, but I spent a lot of time looking at Lucy's code. They have a key class that's not just a string, but the column names are represented as a key class instance. And inside of that key, it has the original casing, and then it has an uppercase version it stores. And the uppercase version is kind of like what it is internally, and that way you can do these case insensitive lookups, but you still have the original case in there. Um,
Okay.
so I assume Adobe does something similar to that, but you have to be careful because depending on how you create it, you get it all uppercase.
Yep. Okay, so next up here we have one from Ben Liddell. And this one he was looking at his custom tag performance differences between the CF module and CF input in Lucee. And part of his hackathon at Envision, they basically spun some stuff up in Docker from his host computer, moved into his Docker container, and then instantly ran into some issues with CF import based on custom tags. And Docker on Mac and even I think on Windows too because of the way it works. It's a pretty good substitute for the same working environment except for file I/O. There's always been a big bottleneck in that, and so if you do something with a lot of file I/O, you can really see some performance differences. And so he was looking at CF input tag versus using a CF module and seeing if there was a difference there, and he found out there sure as heck was. And so if we scroll down a little bit more here, you can see how in the CF import, basically every time that tag was used, there was a huge 1.5 second delay, basically, or 12 milliseconds if you use the CF module tag. So
I think
basically,
this is one of the things I had tweeted about.
yep, exactly. And so, yeah, didn't know why, but Fusion Reactor made it pretty quick to see that that was the import tag that was causing all the problems. And if you compare it to the CF module, it happened a lot quicker. But it was all basically because of the file I/O.
Yeah, it was one of the things that was interesting is it did this even with trusted cache or inspect templates, as Lucy calls it, turned on because the disk checking wasn't part of compiling class files. It was just part of the tag that says, "Oh, you've included a custom tag. Does it exist on disk?" And then if it does, then it will go and look and see if there's a compiled version. And of course, Misha already commented on the ticket that we put in about it, saying, yeah, we should put in some kind of cache, so you don't look for the file over and over again. The trick, of course, is always nice hackers reference. The trick
Yep.
is always on production. You always want to cache those kind of things because your file system never changes. But on development, what if you moved a file around and you want Lucee to check and make sure it exists? So it's always a trouble to cache those things. But
Yep.
anyway,
For sure. And then we have one more blog post from Ben, basically part 11 of that custom tags to create an email DSL. So if you want to check that out, that'll be in the show notes as well. And then the last one is a podcast. They've got episode 11. So episode 11 is a listener questions. This one is where basically they had a response from Adam Cameron on their blog, on their episode about testing. Because Adam posted a scathing but loving rebuttal of everything that Ben had said in episode 9 on testing. So they discuss Adam's post and dig more deep into how testing gets applied in real world scenarios and answer a few other questions. So check that out. And I mean, Adam had some good points as we mentioned before, but I haven't actually listened to this one yet. I want to listen to this and see how they react to Adam's responses. So, but another good one. So that's the end of our blogs, tweets, and videos for the week. But let's get into the jobs. We have 5 new jobs on jobs.com this week. So if you're looking, there's a position in Texas, Melbourne, Florida. When I see Melbourne, I always think Australia.
yeah, exactly.
Like, wait a minute, what? Melbourne's in Florida? Well, that's kind of the Florida of Australia, maybe. And then a couple more jobs here as well. So ColdFusion developer, Plymouth. And then this one here might be the same. Let me click on it and find out a little more details. Social Security Administration in Woodland, Maryland. Interesting. So
Texas has a Woodlands, but Maryland has one too.
Woodlawn.
Oh, Woodlawn.
Woodlawn. Sorry, I might have said that wrong the first time too. So yep, so a lot of good job postings this week, so go check those out if you're looking on getcfmljobs.com. Follow them on Twitter to see them as they get released, or just check out the site there. And if you're looking for someone, remember you can post right there too. Okay, next up we have our ForgeBox module of the week, and this one isn't a module as you stated. But
Package.
It's a package, and package module, I guess. It's still available on ForgeBox, and that's the important thing. And this week we're going to talk about one that we probably should have mentioned before, but we haven't.
Lucee server.
The Lucee CF Engine. And if you look at versions here, you'll see there's 682 versions of Lucee that you can run via command box.
That's a lot. That's because we have every single snapshot build ever automatically generated. We used to only have the major versions because I would manually add them, but now it's fully automated. And as soon as Misha, look, there's 6.0 snapshots in there. But as soon as Misha commits code and pushes it and the Travis build runs, there's a job that day will pick those up. It'll push them into S3. It'll stick them into ForgeBox, and you can test on the bleeding edge. And a lot of people don't realize when they start a Lucee server in command box and they dial in a specific version, it's just going out and installing a package off of ForgeBox, which is the Lucee engine. So, yep, those are all out there. And if you scroll up real quick, Gavin, you can show them. There's a little filter at the top of the version page on ForgeBox where if you want to be able to find a version, you can type in part of a version number. So if you type in like 5.3.6, it'll filter the versions below, or you can say, show me only stable versions, show me snapshots. So I can't talk. Those are some recent changes that Javi helped add to this to make it a little bit easier. And also, if you look in the URL, you'll see that it saves that deep link to that exact filtered version. You can copy that URL and give it to someone, and it'll drop them to ForgeBox. It'll switch the versions tab. It'll apply that filter. So I use this a lot to help people kind of link them directly to a version of a package.
Yeah, that's really cool. I hadn't noticed that myself, so that is pretty neat. Yeah, and if you do have a look, you can see that the latest snapshot for 5.3.8 is up to 149, Brad. So they have had quite a few snapshots.
They've been banging on it for a while, that's for sure.
Yep, it's kind of neat to see when the dates they're added as well in different versions. So pretty cool. So
all right, let's wrap this up. I have a meeting in 4 minutes. Oh, make that 3 minutes.
Okay, well, VS Code is up next. Our VS Code's hint, tip, and trick of the week is our Rainbow CSV. And that one actually is pretty cool. I haven't seen it. If Brad needs to drop off, I'll just pretend he was never here. But the Rainbow CSV has some cool features. I kind of like how it highlights each column separately, which is really useful when you're messing with it.
Yeah, because they're not like, all tabbed in or aligned. They're all kind of mixed together. But you can follow down with your eyes. That's a good idea.
Some multi-cursor editing going on, some automatic consistency check as well.
Oh man, how many times have I stared at a CSV file and you got to count in like 8 columns to find,
Yep, and they support lots of different separators and certain extensions that'll auto-load. The cool thing is, I didn't even know you could do this. There's actually a query language called RBQL, which allows you to basically query over the CSV, and then it spits it out in here like a little tabular format and everything. So I thought that was pretty dang neat too. So pretty cool.
Pretty sweet.
Pretty cool.
There's a reason everybody's moving to VS Code, I tell you.
The funny thing is they've actually had it for lots of other versions too. They've got it on Vim, Atom, Sublime, Get It, Inedit, and Nano, and IntelliJ. So anyways, I thought that was pretty cool too.
I'd never heard of it until it reached VS Code.
Yep, exactly. It's because this podcast is awesome. That's why.
It is. It's because we give you what you need to know here.
Yep. Okay, well, last but not least, we want to thank our Patreon supporters. And now remember, bronze packages now get ForgeBox Pro accounts and CFCasts subscriptions as a perk for their Patreon subscription.
So if you're not sure which of the several ways you can give to Ortus, the best way is to sign up for a Patreon package, and embedded within that will be perks like CFCasts and other things. So
yep, and if you go to our Patreon page right here, you can see the different accounts, and you see some of the information on the perks here. It'll tell you what you get, etc. So definitely
get what you get. You don't throw a fit.
Yep. And then if you didn't get the email inviting you to those, just reach out to us and we'll get your accounts connected and everything.
Yep. And if you're a Patreon supporter and you don't have the little special badge on the Ortus community, let us know as well. We'll make sure you get that so you can wear your swag. Okay, yep. I read the Patreon names last week, so I'm going to say it's your turn.
Okay, so thank you, Don Bellamy, Eric Hoffman, Gary Knight, Giancarlo Gomez, David Bellinger, Yogesh Mathur, Mario Rodriguez, John Wilson, Natrix, Joseph Lamory, Ben Nadal, Brett DeLine, Kyle Von Staten, Charlie Earhart, Dan Carr, Daniel Garcia, Didier Lesnicki, Edgardo Cabezas, is that right this time? Jan Yannick, Jason Dager, Jeff McLean, Jeremy Adams, Jonas Erickson, Jordan Clark, Kai Koenig, Laxma Terohadi, Leon Suramelis, Matthew Darby, Matthew Clemente, Mingo Hagen, Patrick Flynn, Ross Phillips, Scott Steinbeck, and Stephen Klotz.
It's a Steinbeck. It's in the back of your throat.
That's why we have you saying, Brad, because you're just way better at this.
But, if Scott ever finishes that JMES path support for command box, maybe we'll start saying his name right.
Yeah, he said he's working on chat. He's working on it. So
well, we'll have to talk about that. That next time I'm on. I'm pretty excited about what Scott's doing.
Cool.
Kind of like the JQ command for Bash, but built in the command box. But we're out of time for today, so
yep.
Just leave that little cliffhanger dangling for you.
Yeah, so come back and check that out real soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernizeordie.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.